Dennis, I'm going to skip your question right now about revenue targets while we're thinking about it, okay? We're going to jump down to an easy question, cell size. What I really like for cell size for almost all of our greens are the 812, it's a 96, and basically they're being phased out. I really like that size. It works really, really well for just about every type of green I have, generally anywhere from 3 to 5 weeks. Most of our brassicas, we definitely, like tatsoi, Mizuna, pak choi, Chinese cabbage. Basically, by 28 days, they are ready to go in. They're nice, big, healthy, beautiful transplants. Give them a really quick start.
But when you're doing things like Hakurai turnips, which we do Hakurai turnips and transplant them, you put those in a smaller cell, 200 cell, I think.
That's correct. Yeah, we're doing turnips and beets in 200 plug flats. Question about planting lettuces and spinach. Basically, we do wide beds in our high tunnels. They're 42 inches wide with 4 lines of drip tape in each bed. Basically, they're spaced out 10.5 inches apart, the drip tape is. And I'm going with drip tape that has an emitter every 8 inches.
Hello, can you guys hear us out there?
Yeah, you're here, Luke. Yeah.
All right. Is it a good volume?
Yeah, works good for us.
Works good for you? Okay. Sorry for the delay, folks. I'm back. I'm here with Sara, Hanson, and I'm really glad you guys are getting started without us. A little explanation about what happened. Our internet service provider went down at the PFI office, and so we had to run down to the university and use a connection there. And we just got everything set up and good to go, and so we'll begin right away. Thank you all for joining us. We're very glad to have you all here from all across the country to listen to great farmers talk about high tunnels, great opportunities with season extension. In just a few minutes, I wanted to share why Practical Farmers of Iowa is involved in this wonderful event. We really believe that farmers learn best from talking to other farmers. So we want to do anything we can to help folks learn from each other. And as you can see in this photo, this is from last summer's field day. We do about 30 field days a year where folks can visit farmers on their farms. So think of this online event as like an online field day where you're sitting next to farmers across the country asking questions together and learning together. We were started in 1985 by a group of farmers who came together in the heart of the farm crisis to solve challenges that they face and share widely what they were working on. And sharing widely is what we're doing well this fall with this great Farminar series all lined up here. We're in our 3rd week of the fall Farminar series, so please join us every Tuesday through December 18th. We're going to have all kinds of enterprises, all kinds of farmers across the nation, really, contributing to this great series. We'll continue again in the winter, so look forward to more Farminars coming down the pipe. We've got great support for Practical Farmers of Iowa from our members. We're a grassroots organization from the bottom up. Folks in our organization are directed, our staff are directed by the folks in our organization. The members decide what the priorities are, and we deliver those programs to their specifications. So by you being here tonight, you're going to get an evaluation in your email. Please put your email in the chat box there, and we'll be glad to capture your top priorities and add those to our list of Farminar topics. Who knows, maybe next year you'll see a Farminar with your topic in mind, and even speakers. You can suggest a favorite speaker to hear from. Okay, going to the next slide here. There we go. Missed that one there. So we've got all kinds of farmers, livestock farmers and crop farmers, beginning farmers and experienced farmers. So you're all welcome to be at the table and share your experiences together. Here's a great event with Derek Roller on the left there, Eastern Iowa farmer. He's been a beginning farmer for many years now and is actually starting to help train the next generation himself. A couple events to call your attention to. If you're a horticulture farmer in Iowa, we'd love to have you attend our fruit and vegetable farmers meeting coming up November 26th. As you can see on your screen, there's still opportunities to get involved and help direct the fruit and vegetable farmer programming for our organization. So it's a great event to go to a farm near Grinnell, and a vegetable farm near Grinnell. The Grinnell Heritage Farm is the name, and get together with other farmers and help discuss priorities and even look at a new packing shed put in by fruit and vegetable farmers Andy and Melissa Dunham. Also, there's still a couple seats left for our Next Generation Retreat. We've got 44 folks registered, and we'd love to have you attend as well. You can register online at the link you see there, and it's Friday, November 30th to December 1st. It should be a great opportunity to learn production, marketing, business planning, financial information, and strategies with other beginning farmers. I've gone too far. Again, it's not time for me to step away and let Paul, Alison, and Sara lead the discussion tonight. Sarah's sitting right next to me, so I'll hand it off to her to begin with her introduction, and then we'll go to Paul and Alison to have our great discussion. And I'll just be pulling up Sarah's slides here right now. Here we go. Take it away, Sara.
Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Sara Hanson, and my farm, Prairie Sky, is located in north central Iowa, where I grow and market a variety of produce to my local area. In the last couple of years, I've placed more special focus on producing greens in my hoop house and hope to focus on more of that in the years to come. How do I forward that? Just go ahead and hit. Okay. So to kind of orient everybody, my farm is located about where you see the star there on the slide. So just about 20 minutes south of the Minnesota border, almost straight north of Des Moines. Algona is one of my market centers, which is the nearest town to me. Algona's population is about 6,000. Otherwise, larger centers are about an hour's drive from my farm. Des Moines to the south and Minneapolis-St. Paul to the north are about 2 hours. And also for reference, just to kind of orient everybody, if you check out the USDA hardiness zones, my farm is right on the edge of zones 4 and 5. Okay. So after working several years on other farms, I returned home to Iowa in 2008. I purchased 10 acres of my great-grandparents' original farmstead, which was built in the 1880s. I purchased 10 acres from my parents to start my own vegetable farming operation. Since returning home, I have been working full-time off the farm as well, in order to fund farm renovation projects and fund some of my vegetable business startup costs. And to give you guys a little bit more about my background and why I've added a hoop house or a high tunnel to my own farm, just shortly after I finished college, I ended up spending 2 years working at Vermont Valley Community Farm near Madison, Wisconsin. And farmers Barb and Dave Perkins were a huge inspiration for me. At that time, we were packing around 500 community-supported agriculture shares a week from their farm. And we also supplied a 4-week early spring share with crops grown in their hoop house or high tunnel. So that was my very first introduction to growing in a hoop house, and I loved it. So the top picture there is from the farm in Wisconsin. So we filled it and provided early spring shares for 4 weeks. Then that was transitioned to tomatoes and other crops. The photos below there, I then from Wisconsin moved out to Montana and worked as a produce manager for about 4 years at a farm called Deep Creek Green. We had about 4 acres in vegetable production. We also had a cut flower operation as well as a full-line nursery on the farm. And to work with our short Montana growing season, we did utilize a lot of season extension. So that bottom photo there on the left is an image of our hoop house in May out in Montana, and you can see that I grew a variety of crops in the hoop house. We were selling CSA shares or community-supported agriculture shares. We also had a retail space on the farm where we did direct sales to customers. We sold to restaurants and also did some local grocery stores. But it was at Deep Creek Green that I kept really good records over those years, and I was able to evaluate our production from our hoop house and our production from our field, and learned pretty quickly from evaluating all those records that there was great potential for profitability for growing and selling produce out of a hoop house. So I knew that down the road when I started my own farm that I would want to incorporate a hoop house because I did see the potential for profitability. And one other thing with my previous growing experience, I also noticed that product quality was also much improved. So there's finally a hoop house of my own. Thanks to the help of friends and family, in 2010, I constructed I ended up with a Farm Tech round style 30 by 72 foot structure. It has roll-up sides on the north and south, and I did participate in the Natural Resources Conservation Service cost share program for high tunnels and season extension at that time. So I was able to work with that program, which was great. At that time, you couldn't run electricity to your structure, so I didn't inflate 2 layers of plastic, but that's something I have considered doing down the road. But since I put it up in 2010, I've had 2 years of growing since that time in 2011 and then in 2012 this year. And primarily my markets are, my main market has been from April to June. Although there are other growers in my area who have constructed high tunnels in the last couple of years, I've still found that there is a good demand for early season greens, and I've done really well selling early crops out of my hoop house. And I'm hoping to learn more from Paul tonight on how I can maybe extend the season and grow later in the fall and even into the winter. So I think there's great market potential for that in my area as well. So I have sold both wholesale and then done some home deliveries. I am hoping to, again, learn from Paul this evening about how they market their produce. I'm really interested in their online ordering system, which I would be very interested in implementing. But primarily I've been growing a lot of greens, kale, chard, radishes, carrots, beets, fennel, all sorts of crops that can tolerate some cold. During the midsummer, I have grown tomatoes and peppers and other crops, but I would really like to utilize my hoop house space for that early season market and then again the late season market. I do also have an outside area of production on my farm too, just kind of a small, I think it's 100 by 100 space that I do some field production. I also have 5 acres of alfalfa on my farm and 2 acres of prairie buffer or CRP, Conservation Reserve Program land. So I do have the capability to expand my field production space when the time comes. But for now, I'm really trying to focus on my hoop house growing and fine-tune that. And here's a shot of one of my dad's tractors there. He still farms to the north of me. So there's the original farmstead that my great-grandparents owned was about 80 acres. So we sliced off about 10 acres for me to start my farm. And there's 70 acres that my father still farms, conventional corn and soybeans to the north of me. And then he also, my parents actually live 3 miles down the road. So my father total farms about 320 acres. And over time, I would like to work more with my dad. So that's on my radar. And I'd also like to consider adding chickens and cut flowers to my current operation. So that's kind of where I'm headed. And again, my main marketing goals for 2013, I'd like to focus on hoop house production, that April to June window, and then again October to December, and continue to wholesale greens and kale and a few other crops to area restaurants and grocery stores. So I'm happy to answer any questions, or Luke, if we need to introduce Paul. And
Very good. Paul, I'll pull up your slides and you can begin.
Okay.
You know how to change them?
Okay, so tonight we're gonna, basically talk about high tunnel production. I'm Paul, and I'm with tonight. My wife Alison is here with me, and so just give you some ideas. We're market growers. I was sitting here thinking, actually, we're pushing 80 years of experience, but we really don't want to admit that. Just to give you some idea where we're located. We're at the very southern part of Kentucky, just a few miles away from Mammoth Cave National Park. We're probably zone 6B here, maybe 7A.
I actually was in high tunnels before high tunnels were cool. I built the first one with my dad in the winter of late winter of 95, like in January, because I wanted to have tomatoes before anybody else did at our farmer's market. And this is a pretty typical picture. This would probably be, I'm going to say, late April in our high tunnel, and what the tomatoes would look like then. And it allows us to bring tomatoes to the market long before anybody else does. Well, before anybody else did. Now that a lot of farmers have high tunnels, we do have a little bit more competition than we used to. And it also allows us to have things like ripe peppers that are so very, very difficult to do outdoors. But inside the tunnel, we can have these beautiful, large, ripe peppers and actually get them to market. Makes a big splash. And I love this picture because everybody always wants to know, do we have any snow? And someone asked earlier before we came on, how much snow do we have here? And our typical annual snowfall is 9 inches. That's 9 total for the winter. But this was an early snow in '02. It was a December 5th snow, and it was probably about a 3 or 4 inch snow, which would be a big, big snow for us.
And that just, is a winter shot there, some of the different things we're growing. I think one of the things that Sara talked about was, this idea of marketing April through mid-June and October through December, looking at different types of greens. And for us, that has been very, very profitable for our farm. For us, we're market growers, and we do majority of our sales through the farmer's market. And years ago, when we really started, this would be back in the mid-90s, when we were doing winter high tunnels, that became a real issue. How do we now market our products during the winter with our farmers market closing in October? And Alison actually attended something like maybe a Women in Ag program or something, and one of the women who ran a restaurant made the comment, that she really didn't have time to meet with growers, and what she preferred doing was if somebody would email her with what they had, she could look at the email at her convenience and then respond back to the grower. Well, this huge light bulb went off in Alison's head, and she shows back up at the market on Saturday, and she starts asking everybody, hey, what's your email address? And she starts vigorously writing it down. Well, in the meantime, I'm crying and I'm dying because we don't even own a computer. And I'm saying, what is wrong with you? She says, getting a computer is the easy part. Don't worry about it.
This was a long time ago. We're talking probably 12 years ago when people usually didn't have, a lot of people didn't have computers in their homes. I've been in IT since 1979, and we didn't have one, mostly because I didn't want to deal with one, and all we had was dial-up. But we actually started taking names and email addresses at the farmer's market, and you'd be surprised how many people reacted very positively to that. It didn't take very much time at all to build a list.
So I think the things that I like about using email, first of all, we don't have a CSA, so basically we put out everything we have available, and the customers get to pick and choose whatever they want. What I like about using email, I actually build different groups of customers, such as like my A group. These are people who I know they really like good food, and they'll tolerate things that I do. For instance, let's say I'm at the end of one of the growing cycles. I have a bunch of lettuce, but not a lot of anything. So that's what I offer. I say, okay, fine, you know, I've got lettuce available. You're going to love it. Tell me how many heads you want, and we're going to deliver a mix of lettuce. And they're the ones who are going to say, sure, go ahead, give me 3 or give me 5 heads or whatever. Or if I run out of something, they're the ones who realize, okay, you know, I ordered 2.5 pounds of mesclun, but I ran short and I can only give you 1.5 pounds. They're not going to die over it. They're going to adjust and they're going to move on.
And the good part about that for those customers also is those customers who are so flexible for us and in our A group are the ones when we don't have a whole lot of something, we can send a special email to and say, hey, we don't have enough of this to offer to the whole group, but we have enough to offer to you if you're interested.
I think, too, the important things to remember is that, you know, with an email, the customer gets to read it at their convenience and can respond at their convenience. And what I've found is that if you pick a time to send it out, for instance, we send our emails out generally on Tuesday afternoon. If you are used to getting it out at 5 o'clock, we have customers, if it's not there by 6 o'clock, they're emailing us saying, hey, what happened? I haven't received your email. This is just one of our sample emails. You know, just we try to make it with a lot of information on it, you know, talking a little bit about the crops. What I also like is, you know, you can put pictures in, you can put links to information in it, you can put in recipes. This week here, we had some beautiful Swiss chard. It wasn't moving the way we wanted it to. We put this recipe in from one of our customers, and I think this week we actually even put it on sale. And sales just skyrocketed. And after that, they stayed very, very high. But that just, you know, gives you some idea how we do it. And then basically our customers start to respond. They just email us back. This is an actual email from one of our customers. I've just taken out information, you know, so you don't see who they are or how to get a hold of them. But this is pretty typical. And once we get the orders in, we sit down with a map and we work out what's going to be our order of delivery. And then we go ahead and we actually transfer the orders over into this what's called a produce order form. Basically on the left-hand side, I just put down any item I have for sale that week. We have prices on there, and we put the customers on it in the order of delivery. And then the morning, you know, when we're going out to do our harvesting, we actually go ahead and just add up all the numbers, and that gives us our pick ticket, okay? So we know, okay, we need 12 pounds of mesclun, or we need 16 pounds of spinach, or 20 red leaf, and 18 green romaine. What's really nice about winter growing is that so many of these items have a very, very long window of harvest. For instance, let's say radishes, okay? A lot of times radishes, maybe you've got a 7-day window of harvest on it. In the fall, winter, late winter, early spring, they'll probably stand 4, 5, 6 weeks. All they do is get a little bigger before they get pithier. We've had lettuce that was ready to harvest in October, and we actually have, if we didn't have orders for it, we did not harvest it until February. Okay, so that gives you some idea how long it's actually holding in the ground. It's mind-boggling to some extent. But that is how we put together our produce order form. And the other thing, I guess what I'm trying to say is that, rather than when I go to a farmer's market and I harvest everything that's available and maybe I bring some back, in the winter time, we just harvest to orders. Okay, so nothing's being wasted. We're just harvesting what we need to fill our orders.
It might be important to put in here that we are harvesting all winter. We are in a pretty warm spot compared to some of those who are listening in, and the soil in our high tunnels never gets below about 42 or 43 degrees. So we have active microbial activity all winter long, and we have active growth all winter long. That may be an important piece.
Right, and the other thing too, obviously the temperatures have to be above freezing in the high tunnel in order to harvest, especially things like greens, like lettuce, or else they'll just turn to mush on you. And then the day before delivery, we email our customers basically just saying, this is a reminder. We tell them how much the order comes to, when we're going to drop it off, and also let them know if they're not going to be there, we can deal with it. This has really something we've just started doing the last couple years, and we can't get over how this has helped our delivery service. I'm going to say that I can't get over the fact that people will place an order on Thursday and by Saturday morning will have forgotten that they placed an order. That always boggles my mind, but it does happen. This way you don't have that problem.
Or not as much of it. I think another thing that's really important to note is, one, we have a minimum order. We learned pretty early on, if you don't have a minimum order, you'll have people ordering 1 head of broccoli that you drive 10 miles for. And 2, we do have a delivery charge.
And I think that pretty much sums up our order. Next question on Sarah's list was, she was talking about putting in a system for processing, post-harvest handling and packing. And I got a real chuckle out of that because for years I did it on our carport. And Alison never complained that I was freezing. That didn't bother her at all. The only time she got upset was when you pulled that basket out of the water and the spinach would flash freeze. And at that point she thought maybe we should do something about it. So at one point we actually moved it into our heated greenhouse, but I didn't like that because it took us quite a ways away from where our walk-in cooler was. So today we actually have built, attached to our house, a certified bakery, and I actually do most of our washing and packing there, and from there it's just a few steps to walk right into our walk-in cooler. And I find that really works well. I think the things that I find are try to keep things close together, but where you can still walk. The fewer steps you have to take, the less tired you're going to be. Right now my setup is I have a triple sink, and right behind me are my tables and scales and all the stuff I need to package. So basically I set my basket on the table, I fill it with whatever greens it is that I'm going to wash, I turn around, dunk, spin it dry, turn right back around again, dump it into a bin, and start the process all over again. When I have everything of that item weighed out, it goes into either boxes, wax boxes, or in plastic bins. And from there, it's just a few steps to the either a sliding door, glass door cooler, or into our walk-in cooler. And that really, really works well. Somebody's asking where do we get our packing supplies from. We're very, very lucky here. There's a very, very strong Mennonite community that does a lot of vegetable growing. So we're able to go over to a local produce auction and pick up things like waxed produce boxes, tomatoes boxes. We also have a couple of supply houses for things like media, inserts, high tunnels. I mean, you name it, we've got it there. Question here about what temperature we're using for lettuce storage. I like to keep my cooler right around 41, 42 degrees. That seems to work really, really well for lettuce, greens, spinach, things like that. And also, too, just so you know this, both our markets on, let's say our main market is Saturday, our delivery day is Saturday. I like to start harvesting greens, especially like mesclun and spinach, on Thursday. I cut them into bins. The bins then get put into the cooler, and then later that day, and probably in the afternoon, they get taken out of the cooler, and then washed, spun-dried, and packaged. It gives me just a little bit more time to make sure I handle all the orders between Thursday and Friday for delivery on Saturday.
I don't know if we covered all that well enough or not, but Paul didn't tell you that he used to actually spin the lettuce and mesclun around his head in a net bag. So when we got a salad spinner, that was a real improvement. And a couple of years ago, we got an electric salad spinner, and that was a huge improvement. He also didn't tell you about our bags. We do bag our mesclun and our spinach. We actually go to the dollar store and buy their very inexpensive non-zippered bags for that.
Yeah, something I want to go back and top out. When we went to the salad spinner, what I saw was a tremendous increase in the shelf life of our salad greens. I think it was because we were actually spinning more of the water off of them and they weren't as bruised, but I think it's very typical to have people tell us that our mesclun mix has a refrigerated shelf life of about 21 days. Our spinach and, like, quote, head lettuce is probably pushing 28 days, and I think that's phenomenal. And yes, we are using CoolBots in both our sliding glass cooler, door cooler, and our walk-in cooler. We've had them for years. And we're very, very pleased with them. Typically, asking size and weight of bags, we do our lettuce mix and our spinach in half-pound bags and sell it that way. And no, we don't spin the head lettuce. We actually just dunk it, shake the water off of it. It gets packed into waxed produce boxes and just drains or sits in a cooler like that for a while. And we take it out after that and package into orders. Next question we got from Sara is describe a day of winter greens harvest on the farm. And it's hard. Yeah, it really is. I think the big things are, especially wintertime, you're looking at temperatures, okay? The temperature inside has got to come back up above 32 degrees in order to harvest. If you cut the stuff when it's still frozen, it turns to mush. Okay, so you're really keeping an eye on internal temperatures. And then you're going to realize that, okay, certain crops are going to warm up faster than others. For instance, spinach, okay, it's very, very low to the ground. Probably is in an interior bed. I'm probably going to be able to get in and harvest spinach faster than anything else. I go in... again, our beds are 42 inches wide, our aisleways are 15 inches wide, and we use these, the brand name is Sterlite. They're like maybe, I'm going to say a 29, 28, 27, 28, 29, 30 quart storage container, and it sits right in the aisle. It's a really nice size. It's probably 5, maybe 6 inches deep. and probably 22, 24 inches long. And that's what I harvest most of my greens into. This is what would be mesclun, spinach, arugula, maybe baby mustards, things like that. Other greens, let's say like kale, collard, Swiss chard, those are all bunched as I pick and dropped into a harvest basket. And from there, either I'll set up a garbage can with water and then just dump those in and out, shake the water off of them, put them into a wax produce box, and then after I've got my harvesting done, either keep them tucked underneath the truck out of the sun, and then once I'm done with the harvest, drive down to the farm and put them into the cooler. Same thing with carrots, all kind of root crops, carrots, radishes, turnips. Usually I dig and bunch, or dig, wash, and bunch them as I go. When they're put into, I use, you see in that picture with Sara, the bulb crate. I use bulb crates for a lot of items like that.
And it's a long day and it's a hard day.
What I find is spinach, for spinach, we're trying to keep the plant alive. So we actually just harvest individual leaves off the spinach. They're planted about 3 to 4 inches apart, either side of a line of drip tape. So in our 42-inch wide bed, there'll be 8 rows of spinach. Same with our mesclun. There would be 8 rows of mesclun. And no matter how hard I try, I average picking a bin about every 25 to 30 minutes of spinach, with about 4 to 5 pounds per bin. Mesclun I can harvest about 4 to 5 pounds every 12 minutes.
And you do it with scissors.
And I actually do that with scissors. Question being asked, how many pickings to get off a spinach planting? Usually like a fall planting of spinach will not bolt. It'll start to bolt for us at the end of the first full week in February. But after saying that, even though it's beginning to bolt, it still tastes very, very good. It's just the leaves start to elongate. So you still have a period of time, probably for about another 3 weeks to the end of February, where you can still harvest it. So basically, I'm trying to plant a second crop of spinach around the 1st of January, and it'll start being ready to harvest about the first week of March. My mesclun pickings, during the winter months, I'm trying to get 5 or 6 harvests off of mesclun. For us on spinach, it takes about, in the winter, about 2 weeks to regrow. So I have 2 beds of what I think I can sell. So I harvest one bed 1 week, bed 2 the second week, and then I flip them off back and forth. And our mesclun, we actually grow our mesclun in our high tunnels 52 weeks a year. Spring and fall, I'm going to say from seeding to first cutting is 21 days. Spring and fall, I like to get 3 to 4 pickings on it. In the summer, we actually reduce. Once you get into May, those days drop from 21 to like 19 to 17 days. So during the summer, every Monday, we seed a bed of mesclun, and we cut it 17 days later. We cut it once, we turn it under, and usually, often we'll replant that same bed back to mesclun the following Monday then. In the winter time, let me back up a second. During the spring and the fall, there's about 7 days between harvests, 5 to 7, somewhere into there. In the winter, it can take as long as 35 days from seeding to first cutting, and it can take as long as 21 days between cuttings. So we try to have at least 3 beds of mesclun going so we can continue to harvest during that period. The bold and unbold, basically our top selling items are bold. Those are the items that really seem to move our products. Those are things that if we offer them, people are going to order those. The other items that aren't in bold, I would consider for us more minor crops.
Somebody also asked about how much spinach feeds. 8 ounces of spinach will make 1 nice quiche. You'll probably make 4 nice side salads. 8 ounces of mesclun will probably make close to 8 side salads, or maybe 3 to 4 nice big main meal salads.
For us, and then this is something too I think is very interesting. We market into 2 cities. One is Bowling Green, Kentucky. Population of, I'm going to say 50,000, maybe 55,000, has a university with it. We also have a smaller rural community called Glasgow, population maybe 13,000, right into there. Okay, the people in Bowling Green will buy mesclun. Okay, but the people in Glasgow buy lettuce. It's less money, but I would prefer to sell more lettuce. Even though we don't get as much. Okay, for instance, our mesclun, we sell it for $4.50 an 8-ounce bag, $9 a pound. Spinach we get $5 a half pound, $10 a pound. Lettuce we get $2 a head. But I can make more money selling lettuce because
Less labor.
Less labor. Okay, I mean you go in, you cut it with a knife, you dunk it, you box it, you put it in a bag, it's ready to go. Okay, mesclun, spinach, it's very time consuming, the harvest, the washing, packing, weighing, etc. But when I don't have mesclun, or if I don't have spinach, my sales back off tremendously. Those are the 2 items that really move, really make my sales jump.
We have a question about annual revenue for Hoop House. It's a really tough thing to talk about, I think. We really can't tell you in great detail because we have so many things going through them, and at this point in our lives, we've backed off a lot on revenue, and we're doing some experimental stuff, so that makes it a little bit difficult too. It depends on what you want to grow. If you're looking at a bed of mesclun that you can cut 15 or 20 pounds off of, and you can do that every 2 weeks all winter and sell it at $9 a pound, you can do the math. In the spring, if we've got one bed with a row of tomatoes in it with 45 plants, 10 pounds per plant, 450 pounds, $3 a pound, which would be a pretty good price at our market. You're looking at what, $1,400 for one row of tomatoes in one spring. So it just depends on what your particular crop mix is. It can be really good if you have the right crop mix and you have the market.
I think too, so much of that is based upon what you can get for a certain crop. Okay, and that really varies depending upon where you live and what is the community you're marketing into. What I find, and again, this is a generalization, and I recognize it's a gross generalization, but so often in rural communities, people still have gardens. People are still have an attachment to farming, to market, to gardening. Trying to sell spinach for $10 a pound is pretty darn tough, but it's relatively easy to sell it for that kind of money into a more urban community.
And one of the wonderful things about high tunnels, it's also much easier to sell that spinach in January when the people who have really nice gardens don't have any. So in the winter, it's much easier to sell those prime items because their only other choice is to go to the grocery store, and they know what kind of scare may happen every time they do that.
I think too, I'm kind of grinning here. The question I'm looking at is, what crops do I find most profitable? And I love to say, I love growing potatoes in a high tunnel. and often when I say that, I mean, people fall off their chair laughing. I mean, yeah, how can potatoes be profitable? We plant potatoes in a wide bed, 3 hills across, a hill at every foot. So one of our, in our 96-foot long high tunnel, our beds are approximately 90 foot long. So in a 42-inch wide bed, we have 270 potato plants. And we know our yield on the potatoes are going to be a little over a pound per hill. It's almost 1.1 pounds. So that one bed is going to produce 300 pounds of potatoes for us. Well, if we plant them, let's say, in towards the end of August, right around Labor Day, we will be able to dig new potatoes by Christmas. And coming to having new potatoes for your customers at Christmas time, we sell them for $4 a pound. And I can't tell you how many people will literally buy 10 pounds of potatoes at $4 a pound because of the quality of the potatoes. And this evening, one of the sale flyers in our local paper was offering a 10-pound bag of potatoes for $1.49, not per pound, but for the whole darn 10-pound bag. So the other thing I want to say about pricing is I think you need to ask a high price. I'll tell you a quick story here, okay? Spinach. Harvesting spinach by the leaf is back-breaking work. It is almost unpleasant, okay? A number of years ago, I decided I really didn't want to pick spinach anymore. Well, Alison recognized what a good marketing item it was. There was no way I was going to convince her I wasn't going to grow spinach. So I set my devious mind to work, and I thought, okay, fine. This was in January. The Southern Salt Conference was coming up. We were going to be presenting there. I thought, okay, we're going to take a week off from marketing. And when I came back, I told my customers we were selling spinach at $3.50 a half pound, $5 a pound. And I came back and told my customers I just couldn't do that anymore. I was going to sell it $4.50 a half pound, $9 a pound, no price break. And I thought for sure nobody was going to buy spinach, and I was going to be able to stop having to kill myself picking all this spinach. And I could look at Alison right in the eye and say, honey, the people just aren't ordering it. That's not my problem. Well, I can tell you my sales by volume the first week increased 30%. And sometimes you just have to ask a high price, and people think, well, it's got a high price. It must be worth it. I'm going to buy it. The other thing I want to say that, if that backfires, you can always put a sale on. Maybe you have to put a sale on every week. Spinach regularly $10 a pound, on sale this week $7.50, whatever. But it's a lot easier to put an item on sale and reduce a price than it is to try to bump a price up on it. Yes, we are talking about direct sale prices. I do almost all of my marketing is direct sales. I do very, very little commercial sales here. Okay, that's a great slide. Yeah, I think I already talked all the high points on that. Okay, so that's all the stuff there on mesclun. Again, it is that and spinach are the 2 crops that drive our market. Okay, and then something else too that Sara talked about, single poly versus double poly. All of our high tunnels have 2 layers of poly. It gives us about an additional 6 weeks of frost-free on about 3 weeks on the front end, I don't know, maybe more than that. All I can say here is our typical frost-free is about the middle of April. Did you read that?
Third week.
Okay, Alison's saying 3rd week of April. I can put tomatoes in a high tunnel at somewhere between around the 8th of March and the 15th of March, and I have never lost a tomato crop to frost. I can tell you we've had temperatures down 24, I think was the coldest so far we had, and I'm still picking peppers out of our high tunnels right now. So again, 24 to 8 degree difference, that's 32. So I haven't frosted my peppers yet. They're still flowering. They're still in pretty decent shape.
Our ginger's still green, and ginger's a tropical, really sensitive. and it's still green. It's a little peaking around the edges, but it's still green.
Yeah. We do all of our sales direct. We don't do any CSAs. And that's just a personal issue. We basically allow our customers to decide what they want to buy. We give them a list, and they can put their own orders together. Okay, this is we're selling ginger for $9.95 a pound. I was talking to Fred Fosberg, I might be butchering his name, up there in New York, and he laughed at me. Fred said he's getting $28 a pound for his. But I think Fred told me his yield's like a pound a foot, and our yield is 6 pounds a foot. So, you know, I'm still thinking I'm coming out ahead.
And hilling it is critical. We actually side dress and hill it 2 to 3 times. We've found that hilling's critical, and we've found that getting enough water is really, really important.
We actually started in bulb crates in our greenhouse probably about March or so. It's typically ready to be planted out about the end of May, maybe the 3rd week of May. And it seems to us that we're just so busy then it never goes in on time. It usually gets in about the 10th to the 17th of June. We start harvesting towards the end of September. Okay, question, what's in our mesclun? You know, basically we use a variety of lettuces. I'm going to say, just top of my head, black-seeded Simpson,
Red salad bowl, green salad bowl, a green romaine, whatever is cheapest, a red romaine, whatever I can find cheapest, and we buy the Tango because it's frilly. And we use 1 ounce to 1 ounce to 1 ounce of all the inexpensive ones, and then we use less of that of the more expensive ones. And I also take all of my lettuce seed from the previous year and dump in there, because I figure if we're going to be doing seeded transplants, I don't want that that lettuce seed that maybe isn't going to germinate. But by putting it in the mesclun, we get some interesting mesclun that way.
We then also, if you look at the top of the slide, that's the lettuce growing. And then you're looking at greens towards the bottom of the slide. Typically, we're doing greens of tatsoi, Mizuna, purple Mizuna, red Russian kale,
and mustards.
And a mix of mustards. What I really like about mesclun is there's so many different things you can do with it. I mean, if you want to be just simple, I know growers who are doing nothing more than a red and a green oak leaf, okay? And you can offer an all-lettuce salad or an all-lettuce mesclun, okay? Or you can offer, mesclun with greens, and then add greens. You can offer spicy. You can put in arugula. You can put in mustards on it, right? So the same item can literally give you 3 different types of items to sell. The other thing we do here is if the greens grow a little bit too fast and get away from us, we then harvest them and sell the greens as a braising mix. We're able to get $4.50 a half pound for that.
And you'll notice that the greens and the lettuce are separate, and that's because the greens grow faster, and if we don't separate them, they shade out the lettuce. And it also then allows us to cut greens separately for things like braising mix.
Question we asked back on ginger. Where are we getting our ginger? We're getting it from East Branch Ginger.
And it is Puna Organics, Biker Dude.
And a question about how thick do we seed our mesclun?
Thick.
Thick. I know this is how I do it. I like to be low key. Okay, we said we've got 4 rows of drip tape. I take an earthway seeder. No seed in it, okay, and I run down either side of the drip tape. And all I'm doing is letting the wheel make, quote, a furrow. It's a very, very slight impression or depression in the soil, and it's probably, about 1.5 inches wide. And I go then down through there and I just sprinkle the seed into that furrow. And it gives, you can see actual lines, so we can still get in and weed between it. But it's also very, very easy to I cut with a scissor right above the height of the drip tape. I just go right on down there, cutting with my right hand, grabbing it with my left hand, and dropping it right in the bin. Goes really, really fast. Okay, we talked about the inflations. Okay, now we're going to get into insects. Somebody asked about this earlier, aphids and whitefly. I think, especially for winter growing, this is really, really key. Okay, it's the three things. I mean, you've got to have early detection. You do that through scouting, but you also then have to make sure you record your observations. I mean, if from day to day, if you don't know what you're looking at, it's not going to help you. We use like these sticky yellow traps that we put in there about the height of our crops that we're growing, and you can either get them with measurements on it, a grid pattern, or just make a count on it. The next step is identification. You know, if you don't know what you're looking at, it's not going to help, all right? I think it's important to establish a routine. For those of us who can't see as well as we did 20 years ago, having a small hand magnifier helps. Look at multiple plants, record what you're seeing. And I think, too, ahead of time, make sure you know, what are you going to have as a threshold for corrective action? I mean, if on some things, I mean, aphids, if you see one or two here and there, is that an issue? But at the same time, you don't want to wait till you're seeing 100 on a leaf. I mean, if you're seeing 100 on a leaf, you've got a real problem. Here's a picture of aphids on tomatoes. Obviously, we waited way, way too long before we dealt with this, and it's a huge issue. Aphids, I mean, really, they can devastate a greens crop, whether it's just from the number of aphids themselves. You can see them, tucked in on the lettuce. It's very, very difficult to wash off, and they can also transmit viruses. I think the things you got to realize is everybody I know that grows in a high tunnel has a problem with aphids. Basically, they love the range of humidity that exists in your high tunnel. And I think the next step is what's really, really important. You've got to remember there's an explosive population growth. They give live birth. And I'm going to tell you, I know this says that they can double in the population can double like in days. And I'm going to tell you, in my opinion, it probably doubles in hours. Now, that's probably not true, but it feels that way. And if you have dense plantings, especially the things with mesclun and spinach, there's plenty of food and cover. The biggest problem I also see with it is aphids really love to be on the bottom of the lower leaves. Today I was up in a high tunnel looking, and I turned up some of the leaves on kale. And sure enough, most of the very lower leaves that were leaning over, almost touching the soil, many of them had aphids on it. But what I noticed were almost none of the leaves above it had any aphids on it. So just by going through and picking off those lower leaves, I put them in a bin, took them out, fed them to the chickens, and I dealt with them. I gave the chickens a great snack. And I probably removed 95–98% of the aphids that were on the kale in that high tunnel. So I think that's a really good way to deal with it. The other thing to be aware of, aphids really are clueless when it comes to what plant they want to feed on. So you get an aphid that comes along that's infested or infected with a virus, and it walks up and finds a plant and he takes a bite out of it. Say, no, I really don't like that plant. I'm going to go eat something else. But in the meantime, he's already infected that plant with a virus. So another aphid coming along that takes a bite out of that same plant is now going to become infected with that virus and can now pass it along to other plants. And last I want to say is parasitoids can actually be a worse problem on leafy greens. You can wash aphids off of lettuce. It's basically impossible to wash aphid mummy off of lettuce because they stick on it so tight. So what I have to say is, first of all, after growing in the high tunnels for 17 years, I think, I'm not sure there's such a thing as winter effective aphid control. I do think it's important, early detection. When you get to the point where you're seeing 1 or 2 per leaf, you need to deal with it. I'm seeing more and more using trap crops. They really seem to...
They love mustard.
They love mustard. I've heard they really like collards. To actually plant clumps of these type of crops at places where they're going to get in. You know, if you got roll-up sides, you know, maybe put a few of these clumps along your roll-up sides. If you got doors and windows, fronts and back, this is where you put those. And you continue to scout and look at those plants, and when they become infested, you remove the infested vegetation, and often you can break that cycle. We've had some success with insecticidal soap spray or a neem-based product. Again, make sure it has the active ingredient as a duractin. You hear a lot that lady beetle and lacewing release can be effective.
But not in winter.
It does not work in winter. You know, basically, lady beetles and lacewings are active, the most active at temperatures in the 70s, 75 to 80 degrees, somewhere right in there. You're not going to have those temperatures in your high tunnel during the winter, so you're not going to have them. Now, maybe you could release them in their late summer, and they possibly could hold down, you know, an early crop of aphids, and you might be able to knock them back some way that way. But the other thing I've got to say is definitely the worst thing you do is not do anything at all. If you don't do anything at all, the problem will just continue to multiply, become worse and worse. Okay, what's that say? Okay. There's a question posted here. How do you feel about nasturtium calendulas? Honestly, we haven't worked with either one. I don't know. If you are certified organic, both the insecticidal soap and neem products are labeled for organic use, so you should not have any problems. But again, you definitely check with your certifying agent, you know, to confirm that. Somebody else asking how much ginger we planting a season. This year we planted
60 pounds.
About 60 pounds was enough to plant 91, 80, 60, about 250 row feet. Early harvest, we were yielding about 4 pounds a foot, and by about the 3rd week of October, our yield was about 6 pounds per foot. Okay, looking here, fungal diseases seem to be really, really prevalent in high tunnels. I think the things to be aware of it, vent your high tunnel early in the day to remove moist air. Remember, you need to vent even when it's cold out. There are days when I've got to leave the farm and it's in the teens or 20s, and I'm opening up that high tunnel. If the sun's going to come out, it's going to get really, really warm in there. We have a website. It's www.onaturelfarm.com, and if you Google Paul and Alison Wiediger or whatever, you're going to come up with it. But on our website, there's actually a slide program of we show a day in January when the high tunnel is frozen. And I think it'd be worth taking a minute and look at it if you get a chance to look at it. It's kind of cool. But what I'm trying to get at is that even in a January day with the sun out, it easily can be 60, 70, 80 degrees inside your high tunnel. Roll up sides, you know, have them tall so you can move air over it. Don't crowd your plants too tight, especially like things like tomatoes. Make sure you scout for disease. Remove sickly plants. And again, be careful there. I mean, when I see that, what I do is, if I'm working, well, I think what Alison and I have talked about it is, you know, when we're tying up tomatoes, we're constantly aware of, you know, if we come upon a diseased plant and we're handling it as we're tying it up, are we spreading that disease to other plants? When you remove a sickly plant, you want to make sure you're careful that you're not then handling other plants afterwards. And I think the last thing I've got to say is keep your soil biologically alive. We're finding fewer and fewer fungal disease issues when our soils are biologically alive. This just shows a homemade roll-up side on a high tunnel. And the last thing I want to say is managing a high tunnel for maximum production is the greatest challenge. Whether it's a matter of utilizing that space. Too often we think of the cost of a high tunnel. We say, okay, fine, we've just put up a 30 by 72, let's say, so we have 2,100 square feet. Well, you really don't have 2,100 square feet. What you need to figure out is what is the actual square feet you have in production. And the other thing, we start our planning for winter. We actually do it by planning for the following spring, figuring out what crops we want to be growing in the spring of 2013. Where are they going to go in? What beds are going to have what crops in it? And at that point, what crops can be in there and can come out? And we work backwards to our fall planting dates. That way, we want to make sure, okay, if I've got a bed of spinach, but it's going to be where tomatoes are going to go in on March 8th, well, if my spinach crop is, well, that's going to work out just perfectly because it's going to start bolting in February, but I can harvest till about the 1st of March, so then I'll just go ahead and turn that crop under, and by the 8th of March, I'll have that bed ready to be planted in something like tomatoes. And utilizing space, remember one of our first slides, we'll then tuck lettuce plants in between or along the edges of the tomatoes so we get a crop of lettuce out before the tomatoes actually need that space. But I think it's really critical to remember you always want to have transplants ready to go in. I would rather throw a seed, for some reason a crop isn't ready to be harvested and hasn't come out. I would rather throw away a flat of transplants than have a bed open and not have plants ready to go into it. Is that your last slide? I think it's the last slide. We got a couple questions here. This question, do you have an emitter at every plant? Basically on crops like greens, let's say like kale, collards, chard, heads of lettuce, we're planting at every emitter. What we like about that is, you go in and you turn on the irrigation. In about 15 minutes, that emitter is going to make a wet spot. And that should make the ground soft enough that you can pull out a plug like you're seeing there, just pop it out of the pack and stuff it right in the wet spot. You don't have to make a hole. You don't need to pull soil back over the plant. You literally just push the seed, the root ball, into the wet spot, and it's planted. Alison and I can plant approximately 1,000 plants an hour doing it that way. Can really plant almost an entire high tunnel in a short period of time.
And this kind of segues, somebody's asking about rotating crops, and we do rotate, but the rotation is different from what it is outside. Outside you look at rotation by the year, and inside we look at rotation basically by the season. So we might have tomatoes in a high tunnel in March, but we may have 2 more crops in that high tunnel before it's tomato planting season again. And we probably won't plant tomatoes that year either, so there may actually be 6 crops go through before tomatoes go back in that bed. But it's not the same as rotating outside because it's in use all year round. And somebody wants to know about drip tape moving around.
Okay, so we get our parts from Dripworks USA out of California. They make, it's a heavy-duty hold-down. It's like a J stake made out of
wire, heavy wire.
Heavy wire. We usually use it, I hook it at the header to keep the header in place, and I hook it at the very end of the drip tape. Sometimes for crops, let's say like tomatoes, during the spring, I'll actually, at about 1/3 and 2/3, I'll actually hold the drip tape in place. And that's because we're actually putting plastic mulch over the beds. And I don't want the tape moving around when I roll the mulch over it. But the drip tape is on the surface of the soil, and I can hold it in place that way.
And it does move around, and it does bother us, but it doesn't bother us as much as it did 10 years ago. We just kind of look at it and say, oh, well, it's hot now. When the water goes through it and we're irrigating, it'll straighten back out. And typically it does.
Yeah, overall, yes, I would agree with that. Our drip tape, basically we have a round header that goes across the end of the high tunnel. We're using a barbed connector. Just punch a hole in it. The barbed connector pops into the header, and then the drip tape with a knurl nut just locks right onto that barbed valve. Okay, there it is, talking about making use of space. If you look there, there we've got tomatoes going down, and something we learned years ago, we were putting tomatoes at every 24 inches and realized we could reduce our spacing. We've gone to 22 inches. I do know other growers who have gone all the way down to 18. But I found at 22 inches, the plant didn't seem to mind the lack of 2 inches. And in a 96-foot long high tunnel, that 2 inches actually gave me 5 extra plants. Well, 5 extra plants, let's say on 3 rows, it's 15 plants. If we're getting 10 to 12 pounds of tomatoes in a 3-week period of time, that's an extra 150 to 180 pounds of tomatoes. At $3 a pound, that really adds up, what you're getting out of a row.
Somebody's asking what we go into anything goes into our compost pile that isn't diseased or isn't a weed with seeds on it. What I really like to fertilize, we use 2 things mostly in our high tunnel. For fertility, I like to use, it's a composted chicken manure, a lot of times sold under the brand name Replenish. It's a 3-4-3 analysis. We fertilize twice a year, spring and fall. Using in a bed, we use about 75 pounds per bed twice a year. I do believe it's OMRI listed, and most certifiers are, with the 3-4-3, they're allowing it in certified organic production. We also, I like to use leaf mulch for extra organic matter. Biggest problem I see with leaf mulch, especially we buy, like say from a local university, there's so many weed seeds in it, you almost have to compost the leaf mulch before you use it or have a tremendous weed issue. The lettuce you're seeing there in the picture are 12 inches apart. The drip tape I use for my tomatoes in that bed, there's an emitter every 12 inches. So there's 4 lines of drip tape in that bed, 1 on either side of the tomatoes and then 1 on the outside edges. And we turn on the emitter, and wherever it makes a wet spot, we just kind of like shove our finger through it and put the lettuce transplant into it. The white you're seeing there was a craft paper we were experimenting with. Okay, well that's the question there. Yeah, we've gotten away from it. We now use biodegradable plastic.
Biodegradable plastic. And again, we're not certified organic. That's why we get away with that. But even with regular plastic, you can literally feel where that wet spot is, and just using, let's say, a sharpened dibble, just punch a hole to put the lettuce transplants in it. That's what we have. We can take other questions if you want.
Yeah, and we did pretty good. It's 8:26.
Sarah, are you there? Did we answer all your questions okay?
What percentage of your sales are to your home delivery customers?
In the winter, all of them are.
And do you pre-assemble the orders in advance, or do you assemble them while you're delivering?
That's a really great question. We actually assemble them in advance. We actually just we set up a couple of folding tables. They're like 8 foot long. We set them on up and basically bring out the boxes from the cooler. Generally, I do it by bulk and weight. Okay, so let's say right now, like cabbage, broccoli, carrots. Those would be things that would be taking up the most space in a bag. And we just use our order form. Generally, the way we do it is I use plastic, those T-shirt thank you bags. We get them at Sam's, 1,000 for about $13. And we look at the order, make an estimate how many bags are going to be required. And let's say it's going to take this order 2 bags for Pam, right? So we write Pam, 1 of 2, 2 of 2. Then Alison just reads off the order and I pack the stuff into the bag. From there, the bags go into a box. The boxes are 1 1/9 wax produce boxes, and they all have a number at the end of it. Anywhere from 1 to whatever the number is. In some boxes, we wind up leaving a box at a customer, so next week we don't have box number 6. So we make a new box number 6. And next week the customer sends us back box number 6. So we now mark that box 6A or 6B or 6C. And the boxes don't even have to be in numerical order because your produce order form tells us what box number the customer's order is being picked into. But we like to pre-pack. It seems to make it go really fast. The only things we don't pre-pack are eggs, meat, and baked goods. And those items are all packed, let's say like meat and eggs are in coolers, baked goods are in crates, and then when we get to the stop, then it's just a matter of looking at the sheet and Alison may say, okay, you need 2 dozen eggs, a package of sausage.
And 3 baguettes.
And 3 baguettes, and I add that to the order. She yells out, okay, you need, box 6, and she's got 2 bags, and I open up box 6. It should be the very first box I come to, and we go like that. Really makes it very, very fast, very efficient. We're in and out without much problems at all. I will say that especially when we have large quantities, I'm thinking, maybe we've got 20 bags of mesclun going out. At the end of let's say we're doing, 25 to 35 stops. And on our pages, there's 9 orders per page. We will actually do some subtotaling. So let's say on 25 bags, 25 orders, we've got 25 bags of mesclun going out. But not everybody has a bag of mesclun ordered. So at the end of page 1, we'll have a note that says, at this point, we should have 14 bags of mesclun left. And we'll make some double counts, because it's a lot easier to catch the problem with 9 orders than to come to the 27th order and find out you're missing a bag of mesclun, but you've got an extra bag of spinach. Okay, just real quick, aphids. Are aphids active at 40 to 20 degrees? I'm going to say we have active aphids all winter long. Again, like I say, we've had temperatures, outside temperatures down into the 24 degrees, so I'm going to say greenhouse or high tunnel temperature has been 32 at the coldest, and they're very, very, very active right now. No, we spoke at the Great Lakes Expo last year.
And we loved it.
But we're not going back. Minimum order.
$10, isn't it?
Right now it's $10. I can tell you, we didn't used to have a minimum order. I can remember making delivery one Saturday morning. Allison's like the navigator. She has the paperwork. I'm driving. We're heading down this road, and Alison says, do you know where these people live? And I'm thinking, okay, this is a trick question. She's got the map. She should know. I said, well, no, not really. She said, well, I believe that when we get to their house, we're going to see the county line. Well, they were like 6 miles beyond our area where we deliver. And then she proceeds to say, and do you know what you're delivering to them? And again, I'm thinking, aha, another trick question, which I didn't have the answer to. And she says, you're delivering all of 1 head of broccoli for $1.75. But we did some good talking after that and decided we needed to have a minimum order, and we were going to start charging a delivery. So,
and we also have an area in which we will deliver, and outside that area we do not.
So right now we have a $10 minimum order, and we charge $3 per delivery.
Variety of carrots.
Favorite varieties of carrots for winter spring are Napoli, Sugar Snacks 54, and Bolero. What I really like about them is I concede all 3, like a third of the bed will be one, a second third will be the second, and the third bed will be the third, and it gives me a nice succession harvest. They do really, really well.
Poultry have contributed in the past, at least, monetarily, especially the pasture broilers. And, of course, their manure is great for our pastures. We do solarize. We've been solarizing for both weed and disease control in the high tunnels for about 6 or 7 years.
It's one of the, we can only have so many slides up here. It was one of the slides I wanted to show when I took it out about solarization. You might check on SlideShare, punch in like high tunnels or high tunnels au Naturel farm. You might find some stuff out there, especially there's one, it's called Challenges, the High Tunnel Growing. And you might find some of the slides we show about solarization.
Be slideshare.net.
But that is, I think it's one of the best tools in the arsenal for organic growers. But basically we're finding it has to be done during the hottest months of the year. You're looking at basically
July and August.
July and August. I know research done here by Kentucky State University says solarization is like 98% effective in 4 weeks' time, and it's effective down to 6 inches. But as a farmer, in reality, I find I really like from like July 4th to about Labor Day, so it's closer to 8 weeks, and I find it's effective down to about 4 inches. But it will take out a disease such as Sclerotinia sclerotiorum. I actually think we've actually have got a handle on some blights, and it literally takes out 98, 99% of all annual weed seeds. And I've actually had growers tell me they have had some success with even things like Johnson grass, which is a really nasty, rhizome.
The delivery charge has never been a problem with our customers, and when gas prices go up, we take the delivery charge up, and they pay it.
I can tell you, when our first delivery charge, and this goes back like 10 years or so,
more.
maybe 12 years, when we decided to charge a delivery charge, we charged $1.50, and the reaction to our customers was they laughed at us. They said, $1.50? Why are you asking so little? So it has not been a problem whatsoever. Then a question about the end walls. That's what you're looking at in that last slide is this a 20-foot wide high tunnel, and those are actually 3 windows we have framed in. We actually it's 2x4 construction. The window's made out of
2x2s?
The 2x2s. It's 1.5 by 1.5. We just put them together, square them on up, set of hinges at the bottom. They're actually on strings, so we can open them up either all the way, or the strings actually have little loops in them, so we can hang the loops over in the 2x4s. There's some screws screwed into them. We can just hook the loops over them, so the windows just open part way. On that SlideShare, if there's a program on construction, you would actually see the end walls and the windows in one of those slides with more explanation.
All right, thank you so much for being here, everyone. I wanted to call attention to the great work of these speakers. I know we're giving you all a hand from wherever we're sitting tonight. And while we're giving a round of applause, I'd also like to thank our financial supporters, the funders that make this possible for us to pay our farmers for sharing their knowledge. The Beginning Farmer Rancher Development Program of the USDA is a big supporter, as well as John Deere, Cliff Bar, and several private foundations like the Cedar Tree Foundation, and the Iowa Department of Ag-Land Stewardship helped out with one of them, and Ag Ventures Alliance is a great help supporter of these and other farm programming offered by Practice Farmers of Iowa. And now I've said that, I've filled my staff duty, and I really wanted to thank everyone for attending. So please join us again next week for another new Farminar. And Sarah, do you have anything else that you want to say?
Thanks so much, Paul and Allison. It was very informative. I learned a tremendous amount.
We're glad. If you need something else, just give us an email.
I will do that. Thank you so much.
Have a safe ride home, everybody.
I think she mentioned